Well, we're back home, pretty profoundly jet lagged, but that's when you cross 9 time zones, that's going to happen. So let's look back at Psalm 63 again. Last time we talked about verse 6, I lie awake thinking of you, meditating on you through the night. I talked about meditation as not emptying our mind, but really it's filling our mind and ruminating, uh, chewing and rechewing, to dwell on whatever we're meditating on. And David says he meditates on God. Well, God's an infinite being, so the process of meditating on him, well, it would be unending. I mean, it's not even possible to say, well, I think I've got that. No. You may have a good, maybe even a broad understanding of who God is and how he works, but you'll never finish mining the depth of who he is. So, like David, I think we'll never get finished needing to meditate on God. And then he says in verse 7, because you are my helper, I sing for joy in the shadow of your wings. Two ideas in that what we have as one verse. Because you are my helper. See, David never talks about how he is praising God, singing praises to God, and then we take from that's an admonition, an encouragement to us to do the same. But he never does that without cause. So there's always a reason that for David in his mind for singing to God. And he says, because you are my helper. There's an interesting thing about God being my helper. It's interesting to me. I think there's a big difference between God being my helper and God doing all kinds of stuff for me. When we were raising our kids, every time I talk about raising our kids, what I got to say is, as I watched Debbie raise our kids, it took me a while to figure out how to participate in that. But as we were doing that, one of our objectives that we consciously thought of was when they left home, we wanted them to have the skills to navigate life. I wanted them to know how to change a tire. And although I didn't say, here, you learn how to change your own oil, they needed to know how to go get their oil changed and fill their cars with gas. And way beyond that, manage your money, respond to life instead of just reacting to it. But for all of those things to happen, we needed to be the helper, not the doer. In other words, for them to learn how to cook for themselves, I was out of the picture for that, but Debbie showed them and helped them learn how to do that. Instead of doing it all for them, instead of her doing all their laundry, she helped them. She taught them how, and then she helped them do it. See, one of the keys to raising great kids is giving them responsibility and helping them when it's needed. Instead of doing everything for our kids, I will say this in a broad, sweeping statement. Our culture needs to quit that because we're raising kids that are so unresilient. They're so unprepared for life that when they confront life in its difficult and challenging reality, they don't know what to do. They're a generation of victims in some ways. This is not their fault. I think it's a fault of their parents who've done way too much for them. All right. Now, that's one of my genuine, heartfelt, sincere tirades against what has been called helicopter parenting or snowplow parenting, but it's prevailing attitude that I see and encounter too much of the time in parents today. How does that fit with what I'm talking about? Okay, God is our helper in that similar kind of way. I have to admit, there's a lot of times I just want God to do it. I just want Him to take care of it. But He often doesn't. Instead, He helps me move through it, figure it out, become responsible. Well, that is not nearly as much fun as just getting it handed to me. But see, and there are times when God does hand it to me. So I'm not saying He doesn't. I'm just saying generally, He is my helper. He's not a genie in a bottle. He's not Santa Claus. He's our perfect Father. And as our perfect Father, He helps us live our own lives effectively in partnership with Him and according to His design. He's our helper. I just think there's a lot of preaching, and I see this. I do too much on Facebook. I've admitted that to you. I'm trying to cut back. You know, this is my last cigarette, checks in the mail. Well, when I'm looking at my Facebook, there are a lot of times I run across these memes that are like, well, God's going to give you X amount of dollars in the next 30 days. Well, He might, but you know what? That's just kind of silly, really. That's not how God works, generally speaking. He is our provider. He loves us, and He wants for us what is absolutely best. And as a result of that, He's our helper more often than He is our boom genie in a bottle. Now, maybe it's not an issue for you, but for a lot of us, we need to step back in our lives in terms of our gratitude. We need to be thankful that God is our helper. Yes, as part of His nature and part of the way He works in our lives, when I need help, He is there. He steps forward and He offers help. There are a lot of times, though, when I am so wrapped up in my own anxieties and probably equally as often in my pride, I'm not really that interested in His help. I want it my way, and I'd like to do it for myself. I'm like the 2-year-old that says, I do it myself. Okay. Because you are my helper, I sing for joy in the shadow of your wings. I sing for joy. Music, I love music, and I'm not the greatest musician of all, but I am a musician, and I do know that there are times when music expresses what's in my heart, and good music expresses both what's in my heart and on my mind. And that is very often the best expression for me. Music is a great aid in expressing our gratitude to God, our worship for Him, our love for Him, and our joy. The Christian life is not all about joy, but it is about joy. When the Holy Spirit produces His fruit in us, according to the Apostle Paul in the book of Galatians, chapter 5, it begins with love. But you know, the second of those 9 is joy. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Joy. I don't want my entire life to be drudgery. There are times when I'm going to have to do it, and it's going to be hard, and I need to figure out how to get it done, even though it's not fun, and doing this does not make me happy. But my whole life doesn't have to be that. Neither does yours. There is joy. I've discovered, though, at this season of my life anyway, I have to look for joy. I have to intentionally set my mind to find an experience and then celebrate, I don't know the right word, express joy. Joy is like happiness, but it's much deeper. Laughter is part of joy. Singing is part of joy. I think there are times that crying, weeping is part of joy. David says, I sing for joy. Well, maybe you're not a musician. Maybe you can't carry a tune in a bucket. But the joy in your heart, it let it motivate you. Let it find expression. And then the part I really wanted to get to, I sing for joy in the shadow of your wings. That's a very ancient and agricultural reference. I'm not a farm boy. I was raised in a town. I think Stillwater, when I was there in the 60s and 70s, Stillwater, Oklahoma, was just almost a city, but not quite. But anyway, I wasn't raised on a farm. We didn't keep chickens. But I do know from those who did that when chickens hatch eggs and they become little chicks, those little chicks will find security and comfort, not just close to their mommy, but the hen opens her wings up and covers them, hiding them, protecting them. And David uses that as a symbol, an illustration of God as our helper. He says, I sing for joy in the shadow of your wings, covered by your protection. We have no idea how protected we are. My belief is that, I don't know what the percentage would be, I have to say 80 or 90% of the things that God has protected me from, I didn't even know about. May never know about until life on this earth ends and I have His eternal perspective, then maybe. But at that point, I don't think it's going to matter, except that it will renew my joy in praising Him for His goodness, for His help. You don't have to know every time God has protected you, but you do need to be grateful for His protection. God is not covering us with the shadow of His wings because He has to. He's doing this because He wants to, because He treasures us, because He loves us. It's hard not to respond with joy to a God like that. Okay, I'll see you next time on So Care with Stevie Boy.